Before we start, if you're someone who wants more calm, control, and clarity in your life, consider subscribing. This channel is all about using timeless philosophy to solve everyday problems. Now, let's talk about anger. Seneca, the ancient Roman philosopher, didn't believe we should just manage our anger. No, he said we should destroy it completely, because to him, the idea of controlling something so dangerous, so corrosive, was like saying you could control a wildfire with your bare hands. Why even try to contain something that by its very nature wants to consume everything? And this wasn't just theory for Seneca. This was a man who lived at the heart of Roman power, a playwright, a thinker, and the personal advisor to one of history's most infamous emperors, Nero. Seneca had seen firsthand what unchecked rage could do to a person and to an empire. To him, anger wasn't just a bad emotion, it was madness, temporary insanity that tricks you into thinking you're justified, that you're right to act, right to speak, right to strike, even when what you're doing is destroying yourself and the people around you. He even wrote an entire book about it, De Ira, or On Anger. In it, he doesn't just rant about how terrible anger is. He breaks it down. He looks it in the face. He studies it like a surgeon examining a tumor, and in doing so, he lays out a kind of ancient therapy, a practical guide to recognizing, resisting, and eventually rooting out anger from our lives. And that's what this video is about. We're going to look at 10 timeless lessons from Seneca, not just to help us control our anger, but to understand it so deeply that we begin to see it not as something that flares up and takes over, but as something we can spot, anticipate, and ultimately let go of. Number 1, recognize that anger is destructive, always. Seneca begins with a simple truth, one we often ignore. Anger doesn't help us, it hurts us. He writes, "We shall prevent ourselves from becoming angry if we repeatedly place before our eyes all anger's faults and form a proper judgment of it." In other words, if you want to stop getting angry, don't focus on the trigger, focus on the cost. This is the opposite of how we usually think. We say, "Of course I got angry. They disrespected me." Or, "I couldn't help it. I was pushed too far." But Seneca says, no. Look at what happens next. The moment you let anger in, it starts rearranging your priorities. It whispers to you that revenge is more important than peace, that being right is more important than being wise, that your pride is more valuable than your relationships, your career, your future. That's why Seneca wasn't interested in moderate anger, unlike Aristotle, who believed there could be such a thing as righteous or well-timed anger. Aristotle saw virtue as a balance, not too much, not too little. So for him, the ideal was something like good temper, enough fire to care about injustice, but not so much that it burns the house down. But Seneca, and the Stoics more broadly, didn't agree. To them, anger is never useful, not in small doses, not in controlled environments, because anger, by its nature, spreads, it escalates, it lies, it masks itself as justice, when really it's ego in disguise. But that doesn't mean the Stoics believed in being passive, far from it. They believed in acting, in speaking up, in standing against cruelty and corruption. But not from a place of rage, from a place of reason, a place of clarity. Because as soon as anger takes the wheel, you're no longer acting with purpose, you're reacting with poison. Seneca gives us 3 core reasons why anger should be eliminated entirely. 1. Anger makes you a slave. It feels like power, but it's not. It's loss of power. When you're angry, you are no longer in control. You're reacting impulsively, emotionally, without thinking things through. You say things you don't mean. You make decisions that don't line up with your values. You do things that feel satisfying now, but cost you later. Think about it. Have you ever been angry, really angry, and thought, yes, that was my finest moment? Probably not. 2. Anger can't be slowed down. Unlike sadness or fear, which often simmer or ebb and flow, anger explodes. It has momentum. The moment you realize you're angry, you're already caught in the current, and once you're in it, it's hard to pull back. You don't want to stop. Anger tells you, keep going. You're right. Don't let them get away with this. It justifies itself. Even if you're clearly in the wrong, it finds a way to twist the story, to keep you fired up. Anger is contagious. It's not just your problem, it becomes everyone's. Seneca says anger spreads like wildfire in a dry forest. One spark, and suddenly, the whole group is in flames. Road rage, Twitter threads, family dinners gone nuclear. Anger doesn't stay contained. It infects, it grows, and people who wouldn't normally act out do. So if anger is that destructive, what do we do about it? We start by moving away from it, not just in moments of crisis, but in our mindset. We stop seeing it as a strength. We stop admiring people who don't take tea and start admiring those who don't give it. We aim for something the Stoics called tranquility, not numbness, not indifference, but a deep inner peace. The kind that can look chaos in the face and choose calm instead. Number 2, know your triggers. Seriously, study them. Seneca tells us the best course is to treat the sickness as soon as it becomes apparent, giving oneself the least freedom of speech and curbing emotion. Translation: don't wait until you're furious. Catch it early. This is where modern Stoicism overlaps with psychology. In therapy, we talk about anger cues, those little warning signs in your body or your mind. Your heart rate jumps, your jaw tightens, your internal monologue shifts. If you can learn to recognize those triggers, you give yourself a shot at diffusing them. Think of it like this. Anger is like a storm. If you see it coming from far away, you can close the windows, grab an umbrella, stay dry. But if you only notice it when it's already pouring, you're stuck, running for cover. Number 3, just wait. Seneca believed that time is the greatest cure for anger. Not clever words, not revenge, just time. He wrote that the best remedy is to wait, to pause long enough for the fire to cool, for the fog to clear, and for the mind to return to a tranquil state. When we give anger space, it starts to unravel. The emotion burns hot, but briefly, and once it passes, we often see things more clearly, with less drama and more reason. Think about a moment when you were ready to send that text, maybe an angry email or a message to someone who hurt you. In that moment, your heart was racing, your thoughts were sharp, reactive. You might have felt powerful, like this was finally your moment to be heard. But had you waited just a few hours, maybe even just 10 minutes, your feelings would have shifted. You'd see the situation with fresh eyes. Seneca's point was simple. Anger interferes with judgment. It makes you reckless. It overrides your reason and blinds you to the long-term consequences. Where fear tells us to run, anger tells us to fight, and not always the battles worth fighting. Even the most brilliant minds can crumble under the pressure of anger. We've all seen it. Respected people, intellectuals, professionals, reduced to shouting, blaming, repeating themselves, swearing. Anger doesn't care who you are. So what can we actually do? Seneca says, when you feel that heat rising, step away. Leave the room. Leave the conversation. Postpone the decision. Resist the urge to act until you're calm. Some timeless techniques that still work today. Sit on the angry email. Don't send it for 24 hours. Reread it later with a cooler head. Walk away from a fight. Literally. Go for a walk. Let your body catch up with your better judgment. Call someone neutral. A calm friend. Someone who isn't emotionally involved. Who can reflect your feelings back to you with less heat. If, after all of that, you still feel like taking action, then maybe it's worth doing. But the odds are you'll feel differently. Anger rarely survives deep breathing, a quiet walk, or a good night's sleep. And there's science behind this too. According to the American Psychological Association, even something as simple as counting to 10 or repeating a calming phrase like, "Let it go, breathe," can drastically reduce the intensity of your anger. Because remember, anger is an emotion, and emotions pass. They feel permanent in the moment, but they're not. Waiting, even briefly, gives your rational self a chance to catch up with your emotional self. And that is where wisdom lives. Number 4, use art and music to calm the mind. Seneca had a beautiful idea that the mind, especially the frustrated or agitated mind, needs to be gently soothed, not challenged, not argued with, but calmed. He warned hot-tempered people to avoid intense, exhausting study. Instead, he encouraged engaging with pleasurable arts, things that bring joy and gentleness. Poetry, music, history, beauty. In modern terms, he was talking about creative therapy, long before it had that name. In today's world, we call it expressive therapy. And it's powerful. Let's say you're someone who gets overwhelmed easily. Maybe work is stressful. Maybe parenting is pushing you to the edge. Or you're dealing with emotional pain you haven't fully processed. Anger might be your go-to response, but it's really just a symptom. Expressive therapy helps you dig deeper, not by talking necessarily, but by doing, creating, playing, moving. Here are just a few forms it takes. Music therapy, listening to, writing, or playing music to help stabilize your mood. Ever blasted a song on a hard day and felt your whole body change? That's real. Art therapy, drawing, painting, sculpting, giving shape to emotions too big to speak. Dance therapy, using movement to express what's hard to say, letting the body do the emotional work. Drama therapy, acting out feelings, even from the past, to bring buried pain to the surface. Writing therapy, journaling, storytelling, getting your anger out through words instead of words getting out on others. These aren't just distractions, they're healing tools. They let you express the energy of anger without harming yourself or others. They help you process the pain underneath it. Because anger isn't always just about what's happening now. It's often rooted in things that go way back. Seneca's idea of reading poetry or immersing yourself in history wasn't just about avoiding hard tasks. It was about finding beauty and meaning, things that reconnect us with ourselves and pull us out of the chaos in our heads. So next time you feel on edge, try this. Instead of venting or yelling, create something. Paint something messy. Put on a playlist that matches your mood and let it shift naturally. Write a letter to someone who made you angry, but never send it. Let art carry the weight, just for a moment, and you'll find yourself breathing again. Number 5, see yourself as an offender. This one stings a bit, but it's where the real work happens. Seneca tells us, when someone makes you angry, try to see yourself in them, instead of judging them as awful, stupid, or cruel. Pause and ask, have I ever done something like this? And usually, the answer is yes. Maybe not exactly the same way, but the spirit of it, the impulse behind it, absolutely. You're mad that someone lied to you, but have you ever told a half-truth to avoid trouble? You're hurt that someone ignored you, but have you ever been too caught up in your own world to notice someone else's needs? Anger often grows from an inflated sense of our own moral purity, the belief that I would never do that. But the truth is, we've all said things we regret. We've all hurt people. We've all let our emotions override our better selves. Seneca's not saying we should excuse bad behavior. He's saying we should stay humble, human, compassionate. Because the more we recognize our own capacity to mess up, the more forgiving we become, not just of others, but of ourselves. And from that place, anger starts to soften, not because the other person deserves it, necessarily, but because we realize how interconnected we all are, how prone we all are to acting from pain, fear, insecurity. Empathy doesn't make anger vanish, but it shrinks it. It makes it manageable. It makes it something you can walk away from, instead of something that consumes you. Number 6, heal rather than punish. Here's a question Seneca asks, one that flips the script on how most of us think about justice. How much better is it to heal a wrong than to avenge one? It's a powerful idea, especially in a world obsessed with retribution. Someone hurts you. You hurt them back. That's the unwritten rule, right? But Seneca warns us, revenge only extends the pain. It takes one wound and turns it into many. It keeps the cycle going. Anger lasts longer than the initial injury, and vengeance almost never brings the satisfaction we think it will. He draws a comparison that still resonates today, the prison system. In many places, prison is about punishment. Someone breaks the law. We punish them and hope they come out better. But often, they come out worse, more damaged, more resentful. Compare that to Scandinavian countries, where prison is designed to reform, not punish. Inmates live in environments that mimic regular life. They're taught responsibility, accountability, self-control. The goal isn't to humiliate, it's to rehabilitate, to return them to society better than they were before. Seneca would have loved this because it aligns perfectly with Stoic thought, that healing is more powerful than punishment, that helping someone improve is a higher virtue than taking satisfaction in their suffering. And this doesn't just apply to courts and prisons, it applies to our daily lives. When someone wrongs you, a friend, a sibling, a partner, you have a choice. You can hold that anger, lash out, get even, or you can rise above it. You can point out the harm without becoming harmful yourself. You can become the one who heals the rupture, not deepens it. And in doing so, you become stronger, not weaker. You take control back from anger and give it to reason, to character. Number 7, choose your friends wisely. Seneca, ever the realist, reminds us that the people we spend time with shape not just our habits, but our very mindset. He advises, choose men who are honest, easygoing, and have self-control, the sort who will not arouse your anger and yet will tolerate it. This advice might sound simple, even obvious, but it's deeply profound because it gets at something most of us overlook. Anger is contagious, and so is peace. In modern psychology, Dr. David McClelland, a Harvard social psychologist, found that up to 95% of your success or failure in life can be traced back to the people you regularly associate with. That's not just career success, it's emotional health, daily habits, even your baseline happiness. Seneca knew this thousands of years ago. He wasn't just warning us to avoid bad influences. He was pointing out that if you're prone to anger, you must be especially careful. Because if you surround yourself with people who provoke, belittle, or play mind games, even if they don't do it consciously, they will pull you away from tranquility. The provoker might be a friend who constantly mocks others, a family member who pushes your buttons just to watch you squirm, a colleague who thrives on drama. Sometimes we stay in these relationships out of habit, guilt, or fear of being alone. But over time, they erode our mental clarity and emotional control. Seneca's solution: choose friends who bring you peace, who build you up, who tolerate your flaws, but don't trigger your worst instincts. And beyond that, he gives one more subtle but powerful warning. Don't go digging for drama. Even among your best friends, you might feel the urge to snoop, to check who your partner's texting, or ask what someone really said about you. But if your goal is a tranquil mind, ask yourself, do I want to know this truth? Or do I want to be at peace? Sometimes the greatest discipline isn't in controlling what you hear, but in choosing not to seek it out at all. Number 8. Don't seek reasons to be angry. Seneca wrote, "It makes you angry that a slave has answered you back, or your wife, or your client. Then you go on to complain that the state has been deprived of freedom, when you've deprived others of it under your own roof." What he's pointing out is this: we often get angry over small personal slights, while conveniently ignoring the times we've done the same to others. It's a kind of emotional hypocrisy. We inflate the offense against us, and we justify the mistakes we make. We live in an era of comfort, hot showers, fast food, unlimited entertainment, instant delivery. These things are amazing, but they've also made us less patient, more irritable. We've grown thin-skinned, constantly shocked that life isn't bending to our expectations. We get angry when the internet lags, when someone disagrees with us online, when we can't find our keys. And perversely, anger gives us a little jolt of power, a sense of righteousness, like we are the ones being wronged by the universe. Seneca would tell us, that's no way to live. Instead of waiting for the world to frustrate us so we can feel justified in our anger. The Stoics practice premeditatio malorum, a visualization of all the things that could go wrong, not to be pessimistic, but to be prepared, to strengthen their minds against life's inevitable chaos. Someone cuts you off in traffic. You imagine that this morning, your friend forgets to text back. You anticipated it. Your boss moves a deadline with no notice. You were ready. The Stoic isn't cold or indifferent. They're just unshaken, because they've chosen calm before the storm. Number 9, use self-deprecating humor. Seneca asks, what should a wise person do when given a blow? The answer, he says, is not to fire back, not to retaliate, or return the insult, but to laugh it off. He gives us the perfect example. Cato, the great Roman Stoic, once stood in court arguing a case when a rival, Lentulus, spat in his face. The room froze. Everyone expected Cato to lash out, to retaliate. Instead, he calmly wiped the spit and said, "I will swear to anyone, Lentulus, that people are wrong to say that you cannot use your mouth." A joke, a disarmingly clever one. This is the art of self-deprecating humor, taking the insult and flipping it back, not with anger, but with wit. It puts you above the situation. It shows that you're not only unshaken, you're in control. In daily life, this might look like laughing at your own awkwardness before anyone else does, turning a mistake at work into a light-hearted comment, diffusing tension with playfulness instead of escalation. When you use humor, especially about yourself, you deny the insult its power. You make it your story, and you rob the offender of the satisfaction they were hoping for. Humor is strength, it's flexibility, and in the face of anger, it's often the most dignified response. Number 10, practice self-reflection. We end with perhaps the most stoic practice of all, self-reflection. Seneca believed that all of our senses, including emotional senses, could be trained. He said the mind should be called daily to account for itself. In other words, we must make reflection a habit, not an afterthought. Anger isn't random. It has roots, it has patterns, and to understand them, we have to pay attention. One of the most effective modern tools, an anger journal. Each day, write down what happened that made you angry, what exactly triggered you, what thoughts were running through your mind, how intense was the anger on a scale of 0 to 100. Do this consistently, and you'll begin to spot the patterns. Maybe it's a certain kind of person. Maybe it's when you're tired or hungry. Maybe it's connected to something deeper. Old wounds, insecurities, fears. By tracking your anger, you shine a light on it. And in that light, it starts to lose its grip. You can't control what life throws at you, but you can understand how you respond. You can prepare, you can plan, and you can replace reactivity with reflection. If this video shifted something in your thinking, even just a little, you're already on the Stoic path. For more wisdom like this, subscribe and check out the full Stoicism playlist. Thanks for spending this time with me.